Ford's third generation Kuga gets a far-reaching update with sharper looks and key engineering changes for the hybrid models. There's a much smarter, better connected cabin, and this mid-sized SUV's towing and off-road capabilities been improved. All useful changes. If you're shopping in this sector, this is still a car you very much need to consider.
For years, a Ford Kuga was the mid-sized SUV crossover that other brands turned to if they were developing a car in this class and wanted it to be good to drive. The Mark 1 model was out on its own in this respect, but when in 2013 Ford had to make the second generation version slightly larger and heavier, they diluted a few of that original car's virtues in a manner not helped by the additional need to incorporate electric power steering. At its original launch back in 2020, Ford knew that this Mark III design had to do better, which was quite a brief for the company's engineers, because they knew this CX482 design also had to be bigger and carry around quite a lot more weighty equipment. Still, you're always going to have an easier job producing exemplary drive dynamics if your SUV's broadly based on the market's best handling family hatch, in this case Ford's fourth generation Focus. This Mark III Kuga shares that car's stiffer, more sophisticated C2 platform and has the advantage that, unlike the Focus, humbler versions don't have to be saddled with a relatively crude torsion beam rear suspension setup. All Kugas get the proper all-round independent suspension arrangement that only features on the most powerful Focuses. On top of that, the steering column's twice as stiff as the pre-2020 era Mark II Kuga, and compared to that old car there's a 10% gain in torsional stiffness, a 44mm wider track and a 10mm lower centre of gravity. It all sounds quite promising. And so it proves. When we first tested this Mark III Kuga for you back in 2020, we reported that on the road this car feels like what it is, a slightly larger, slightly taller version of the Focus, and not much has changed with this updated model. The steering isn't perfect in terms of feedback, but it's quick and accurate and much better than the electrified rack that featured in the old Mark II design. Push on through the bends in the EcoBoost and hybrid variants, and this Ford delivers the kind of confidence that you simply wouldn't normally expect a contender in this class to be able to give. The handling further assisted by various finely tuned aspects of electronic assistance. The PHEV plug-in hybrid version that we're trying here isn't quite as sharp to drive as its stablemates. Blame an extra 250 kilograms of additional weight for that, but it's still a more entertaining steer than its segment rivals. Across the range there are things like torque steer compensation, a subtle stability control system and torque vectoring control to get the power down through the bends. It all combines to create a car that really can reward at the wheel, even in its most affordable forms. Perhaps especially in its most affordable forms. We'll get to that in a minute. Overall, there's nothing else in this segment that feels quite the same. Get out of one of these and go and drive a rival Volkswagen Tiguan or Peugeot 3008. We think you'll find that it'll feel a little dull by comparison. The ride of this Mark III design was improved too, thanks to an extra inch of suspension travel, taller profile tyres and a new isolated rear subframe. We should get on to engines because quite a lot's changed with the engineering of this car as part of this update, which has seen some boxes here ticked and others not. The key thing that hasn't changed, and the thing the lineup really needed, was a more efficient replacement for the entry-level 150 PS 1.5 litre EcoBoost petrol unit, which unfortunately continues unchanged and, as before, can only be had with manual transmission. All other Kugas get a CVT automatic. Diesel drifted out of the pre-facelift lineup just after launch and hasn't returned. There's better news if you can afford some kind of electrified Kuga power plant. The availability of four-wheel drive drifted out of the pre-facelift version of this Mark III Kuga, but here it's back as an option for the 180 PS hybrid FHEV powertrain that most customers will choose, which boosts power fractionally to 183 PS and improves the 62-mile-an-hour sprint time to 8.3 seconds, nearly half a second quicker than the front-driven hybrid version that will account for the majority of sales. Unfortunately, you still can't have four-wheel drive on this still front-driven only PHEV variant. That's the one we've chosen to try today. But this model does now get a more powerful electric motor, taking total power to 243 PS, and a bigger 14.4 kilowatt-hour battery that now allows for a much longer EV driving range, almost 43 miles, though that's still some way off the kind of EV range figure you'd find in the best of this car's rivals. A Volkswagen Tiguan e-hybrid, for instance, now manages up to 71 miles. To get close to Ford's quoted EV figure, you'll need to regularly boost brake regeneration energy harvesting by pressing the L button in the center of this circular gear controller. And of course, you'll need to get your head around all the different drive modes, which are all pretty much as previously. With all Kugas, there are normal, sport, eco and slippery settings, and this PHEV version adds 3 further settings for the electric drivetrain. That's EV Now, which focuses the drivetrain on all-electric output, and EV Later, which holds the current state of charge so that you can save it for urban driving that you might want to do later in your trip. Most of the time though, you'll simply leave the car in EV Auto, where clever electronics determine the most efficient use of engine and battery power. So much about the driving characteristics of this car remains as it was before, but there are significant drive differences as part of this update. Thrashing around for a unique Kuga selling point, Ford has seized upon towing capability, re-engineering hybrid and PHEV versions of this car to tow up to 2,100 kilograms, a best-in-class figure. For reference, a Volkswagen Tiguan can tow up to 2,000 kilograms, Kia Sportage just 1,500 kilograms. Special sat-nav functionality allows owners to enter the dimensions of their car and trailer, then the software will plan a route, avoiding low bridges and tight corners. Neat. As is the rather unique ability via the center screen to monitor the frugality of your Kuga whilst it's hitched up. Off-road ability has been enhanced too. Well, it has if you opt for the new Active variant, which has a ride height raised by 10mm at the front and 5mm at the rear. This version also gains an extra trail driving mode, which optimizes traction control and throttle response for progress on different surfaces. Obviously, the ultimate Kuga option in terms of efficiency is this plug-in hybrid 2.5 Duratec PHEV version, which records an official combined fuel figure of up to 313.9 mpg and a WLTP rated CO2 reading of up to 21 grams per kilometre. That and this improved model's longer 41-mile EV range figure now puts the Kuga PHEV in the 8% benefit in kind bracket, which is a considerable improvement on the pre-facelift version, but still lies behind the 5% BIK rating that you get from a comparable Volkswagen Tiguan e-hybrid. This Ford's stats apply, of course, only if you continually keep the battery fully charged, which many owners don't, and which takes 3.5 hours from a 7.4 kilowatt wall box or 6 hours from a domestic socket. Lots of screen tools are provided to enable you to maximize frugality. There's a power flow meter on the center screen showing what's being driven by what. And on the instrument display, you can select an EV coach that helps you to use brake and throttle more efficiently. There's also a trip energy section that shows trip data and, on the hybrids, electric economy, plus a this trip section, which also shows when you power off, that displays your journey duration, MPG and miles completed under battery power. The hybrids have a clever EV zone mode, which as you drive detects areas that have restricted access for environmental reasons, notifying you as you approach. The vehicle can then activate an environmentally friendly drive mode in those areas. Towers will also like the trailer trip feature, which monitors how far the trailer you're towing has travelled and gives a fuel economy figure for the hitched up period. As for other stuff that you'll need to know, well, these days the 3-year 60,000 mile Ford warranty looks pretty unremarkable, but in the first year you do get unlimited mileage UK and European roadside cover and unlimited paint cover. There's additionally a 12-year unlimited mileage perforation warranty. There's also the Ford Service app that you can download on your phone for free. It helps you locate your nearest dealer to make maintenance bookings. Plus, as a bonus, the app can help you find petrol stations and even has a Park Me feature that remembers where you left your car to save hunting for it in busy multi-stories. The insurance group for this PHEV is from Group 21. The visual changes go a little further than the usual facelift wash and brush up, and this heavily updated version of the third generation Kuga design gets a much sharper look than the original. As before, this Kuga sits amongst the market's slightly larger mid-sized SUVs, measuring in at 4,604mm in length in most guises, or 4,645mm in more rugged active trim. Wheel sizes range between 17 and 19 inches. We've got 19-inch ebony black rims here with red brake calipers. As with the original version of this Mark III model, the flanks have smoothly curved concave surfacing, and the ST line variants get body-coloured side rubbing strips. As for this facelift update, well, the most obvious differences are at the front, which features redesigned headlamps and a reprofiled grille, which can, at extra cost, be topped with this coast-to-coast light stretching across the leading edge of the bonnet. At the rear, the main change lies with these smarter LED tail lamps, plus the black roof antenna is now chunkier. Arguably of greater significance, though, are the updates made inside. Can this updated model's cabin reflect Ford's desire for a small but subtle move-up market? Because the architecture of this dash still has to be shared with an ordinary Focus family hatch, that's a big ask. But Ford's cabin design team have done their best to embellish it. If you're familiar with the original version of this Mark III model, then you'll immediately notice this updated design's much larger and considerably cleverer 13.2-inch Sync 4 center touchscreen, though it's not so good that all the climate controls, bar the windscreen demister, now have to sit upon it. That demister's function button now sits alongside the switchgear that was previously on the center console for the rear view camera and the drive modes, which has freed up space for an extra center console cubby. The 12.3-inch digital instrument display that you view through the wheel is also new, as before featuring graphics that change with the selected drive mode. As before, there's plenty of cabin storage provision, and you sit satisfyingly high behind the wheel on supportive AGR certified sports seats that come smartly upholstered in Sensico faux leather with neo suede inserts and red stitching. Right, let's take a look at rear passenger space. Pausing as we do to reference these neat but rather flimsy looking pop-out edge protectors which spring out as you open the doors and guard against car park panel dings, now standard above base trim. It's strange that no rival brand has yet copied this useful feature. This is the largest of the top 5 best-selling medium-sized SUVs on the market in terms of both body length and width, but that's still not enough to free up sufficient space for a third seating row back here. For Europe, Ford seems to have no interest in addressing that market. In compensation, though, you'd hope that it would mean quite a significant amount of rear seat room. Which is pretty much what you get in terms of very decent head and legroom. The big news at the original launch of this Mark III Kuga lay with the installation for the first time of a sliding rear bench incorporated as a result of customer feedback. As before, it slides over a range of 150mm, is 60-40 split, and with both sections fully back, rear occupants can enjoy a best-in-class legroom figure of 1035mm. These side squab mounted levers allow the seat backs to recline as well for greater comfort on longer journeys, though the headrests are of the sort that uncomfortably dig into the back of your neck until they're raised. Even if the need for boot capacity means that you have to push this bench right forward, recessed seat backs ahead still provide for decent knee room. Because of this usefully low centre transmission tunnel, it's not too difficult to accommodate a third centrally seated adult if need be, though the middle part of the bench is slightly domed. And the tall side windows and rear quarter windows let in plenty of light. Now, there's not quite as much classy door trimming as is provided in the front, though brushed plastic and, in the case of this ST line model, red stitching around the door pulls, well, that helps a bit. Again, the door bins are tiny, but there's a centre armrest with cup holders, plus seat back pockets, twin centre vents, Isofix child seat fastenings, and overhead coat hooks and reading lights are all provided. An optional winter pack allows you to add heating for the two outer rear seating positions, and twin USB-C ports are provided for phone-obsessed teenagers. And if you pay the significant extra premium for once for this twin panel glass panoramic roof, the interior can be flooded with light. Let's finish with a look out back. Now, virtually all models now get this powered tailgate, which can be gesture controlled so that it can be raised with a swipe of your foot beneath the bumper if you're approaching the car laden down with bags. Once the tailgate's raised, a very decently sized boot with a low loading lip is revealed, square in shape with little wheel arch intrusion. It's 475 litres in size with conventional variants, though that figure falls to 411 litres with this PHEV model. That's with the sliding rear bench pushed right back towards the rear like this. Slide it forward as far as it will go and your capacity rises to as much as 645 litres or 581 litres for this plug-in version. In this PHEV variant, that's enough for 6 carry-on suitcases below the window line. There's no conventional parcel shelf, just this fabric tonneau cover, which helpfully lifts out of the way when the tailgate's up, as you can see, but feels a bit Heath Robinson and attaches to the inside of the tailgate via a couple of cheap clips. It will, though, be much easier to store than an ordinary parcel shelf when not in use. Which is just as well because there's not much space beneath the boot floor, particularly if you pay extra, as you should, for the mini spare wheel that's not been fitted here. The cargo area is a fairly practical space with small recessed corner areas on the left and the right, plus there's a 12-volt socket and a bag hook on the left, along with the button for the retracting tow bar if you've decided to fit it. And if you need more room, well, it's a bit disappointing that Ford hasn't given the rear seat back a useful 40-20-40 split, nor is there a ski hatch. You retract the seat backs using these rather flimsy cargo sidewall catches, and when the seats eventually spring forward, they don't fold completely flat. Total capacity to the window line is rated at 1,534 litres, or 1,481 litres in this PHEV model. Those figures fall to 1,478 litres and 1,423 litres respectively if you fitted the mini spare. In summary then, it's clear that the Blue Oval brand now means business when it comes to this class of SUV. And if you doubt that, then you need to try this one.